For the record, attending in person, I have Mrs. Iannacido, Mrs. Pesky, Mrs. Traub, and participating via Zoom, I have Mr. Bayes. Before we get into the agenda, could we kindly stand and pledge the flag? All right, item number 1 on the agenda is to open the meeting to the public. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Traub.
Second.
And second by Ms. Pesky. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody from the public wishing to address the council? Seeing and hearing none. I'll move into item 2. I'll entertain a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of March 18th, 2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Traub.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Iannacido. And questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
An abstention.
I see. Thank you. Yep. And for the record, an abstention would be Ms. Pesky. All right. So item 3, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the use of $50,131.18 from the Board of Education Capital Reserve Fund for the purchase of an AT 450 tractor Bobcat. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Trapp.
Second.
Second, Ms. Pesky. And the floor is open for questions. And I would just add, so to get the questions rolling, Mrs. Traub did ask when this was added to the agenda if we could get a report of the reconciled capital reserve fund, which is Fund 313 we call it. And the interim business director provided a spreadsheet. I think I emailed it to you last week when she provided it, and I do have a paper copy here in front of everybody. So questions or comments? Thank you very much, by the way.
Mayor, do we have some type of explanation on why this machine is needed?
So yeah, yes, Dean Pergola is here as well. I think he's going to.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are adding this piece of equipment to our campus at the new campus, TMS-THS. This is for sidewalk, snow removal, sidewalk cleaning. It's going to be able to sweep the sidewalks and remove snow. So we do have a contractor that does driveways. They do not do sidewalks and cleanup. Piece of equipment we have there right now is pretty bad, and we've added quite a bit of square footage of sidewalks with the new project. So this will get us what we have right now. Probably in the near future, going to be looking at another piece of equipment once the middle school side is done, and the piece of equipment that is pretty bad right now that we're putting Band-Aids on will probably be at the end of its useful life.
So what kind of equipment's being used now?
It's similar. It's a Kubota. This one here is a Bobcat. Very similar.
Okay. And Mayor, I'm just trying to understand this capital account. Well, I understand the account, what it's there for. Are there higher priority items right now that the school system needs versus this equipment, especially when it comes to material learning options? My question really mainly is going to lie in, if we have something now to do the sidewalks, I hear that it's now we're hearing that it's at the end of its life. I'm wondering what type of priority this takes versus other items, because I know we've continued to push off multiple projects, capital projects. And at the same time, we're told we don't have money to do these capital projects. We don't have money to do these capital projects. And then we end up doing them 4 years later when they cost double, like with the TMS and Vogel roofs. Yeah, that's my concern right now. Is this, how high priority is this item?
Well, it's very high. But it does based on how bad of a winter we have right now. So we did have a piece of equipment that the supplier that's supplying this allowed us to borrow this year with no charge, just to use it. So we did, you know, we had an additional piece of equipment and we were able to keep up with that piece of equipment. Without it, we would have school closures, delays, a very dangerous situation. So it's very important. And there are other items that can probably rank equally as important, depending how you look at it. As far as safety though, this is the most important.
And Ms. Bergola, have you looked at the cost of having one of these in a season versus purchasing it? Because unless you have other plans to use it throughout the entire year, and especially this summer, you know, when we're looking at equipment like this, is it something that could be brought in just for the winter? That way it's not too brutal of a winter. You bring in something newer to have for that time span and then, you know, get by with what other equipment you have.
I'm a little confused with the question. You're saying if we can bring something in temporary?
Have you looked at renting a machine for the winter months when this
Oh.
needs to be cleaned versus purchasing
No,
this?
no. I have not
$50,000
looked at
machine?
renting one for the winter season to do that. No, we're going to be using it for more than snow removal. One of the reasons why I went with this particular one is because of the sweeping capabilities that it has also, not just a snow removal. So it's going to be used, you know, more than just in the wintertime, but it is a piece of equipment that I did not look into renting one of them. No.
Okay, yeah, I guess it makes more sense if you're using it all year round. But I'm sure you could see the line of reasoning there. If, you know, if we need a piece of equipment just for the winter to maintain sidewalks and we have other high priority capital projects that need to be done to keep our schools open and such, then I just wanted to see where this lies in means of priority and cost savings.
Thank you. Councilwoman, excuse me, Mrs. Traub.
Different board.
Yes.
First of all, I thank you very much. I appreciate this synopsis of the reserve amount. I had looked back at some minutes, and I know in the past we've been hesitant on the capital projects fund as far as funding it because we didn't know where it stood. We didn't know the balance. We didn't know what was in it. And so this is going to, going forward, this is going to be a great little piece of information to have. And I will say, I appreciate Mr. Bias's comments. However, I will also say that I'm going to agree with the Board of Education because they do have their own discussions on their capital projects, and they do put these things in order. And I did look at your list of Board of Ed projects last year. I looked at the Board of Ed projects for the year before, and there were some things on there that I see that seemed to be maybe more pressing, but I'm not on the Board of Education. So I think it's the Board of Education's responsibility to determine what their capital projects are and what steps they're going to take, which ones they're going to put in order for them. So I'm not going to question this. I did obviously do my homework. I researched what that Bobcat was. It can be used for different uses. So, you know, I obviously encourage and hope that they can use it for other things on the campus. So I appreciate that. And I do like that question, you know, did we consider renting it? You know, in the future, maybe that is something you can consider at least looking into. If you're not going to use something for something else, maybe it can just be rented for the months. But I do appreciate those questions. And so you know, given the information that we have now on the capital projects, as far as what monies are in there, my question was it funded for? I did see it listed under district-wide last year, and I believe the year before. So I think it was something that was under consideration in the past. My question was, did this just come out of the blue? But I did go back and see that there was 60,000, I think, in there for district-wide equipment in the past. So that was one of my questions. Was it in the plan? And I believe the answer is yes, it was in the plan. Now, whether that was the one to replace the old one or whether this was.
Well, we have, you know, we're going to have 7 buildings and most of the equipment has been fully used. So we've been band-aiding and fixing a lot of them, and which we will continue to do. But with the additional scope of property we have to clean right now was another you know, added value. We would need another piece of machinery there to do that. So I think it's in there every year just because our equipment is getting older, just like, you know, any other piece of capital. It gets used very heavily and they don't last forever, although they last a pretty long time and we got some good life out of it.
And I think I have asked that question in the past about the subcontractor, but the understanding is they just do the parking lots. They do not do this.
Yeah, they do the parking lots and, you know, we've got a pretty good contractor in there, but there's always stuff, you know, timing wise. So we're always getting aside, you know, I'm sure it's the same here. It's always something to clean, always something to move to get it so it's safe.
Thank you.
Mr. Pergola, does this have does that price include all the attachments you want, like the sweeper and such?
Yes,
Yeah, I think you've made the case. My last, definitely a needed piece of equipment for you. So I appreciate you answering the questions. Now, my last question is, the Board of Ed went through their bid process on this, and that was the selected piece of equipment?
yes.
Perfect. Okay, all I need to know. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? No, I'm gonna, thank you, Dean and Donna.
Thank you.
I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 4, I'll entertain a motion to accept the performance reports for the city for the current fiscal year through March 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Inesito.
Second.
And second by Mr. Bayes. All right, are there questions or comments on the reports? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, I'll entertain a motion to accept the Board of Education budget performance reports for current fiscal year through March 31, 2025.
So moved.
Ms. Pesky,
Second.
and second by Mrs. Traub. Questions or comments on these reports?
Mayor, I just don't know if there's been any update or has there been any comments on that, the quarterly bonus for the perfect attendance. Okay.
No.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
Yeah.
should have flagged Donna down and asked her to stay. No, I haven't.
Okay. You know, just understanding that obviously if they went through this process to do this in order to save money.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at line items and I just don't see any savings. Again, there's 5123, which is substitute salaries teacher, which maybe I don't know if that's the account. It's already 80,000 over for the year, and this is only through March. If that's the line item, I guess is my question. So I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Is that not really working, or could it be a situation where we just have some long-term absences and therefore, so I think perhaps after the year is over, if they give it a year and then they can do some type of summary and see
Yes.
where that's at.
Keeping in mind that in 2 weeks, we have a joint meeting with the Board of Ed. And I think that would be a reasonable question if it's embedded in their FY26 request. Certainly an update, some of the goals, it seemed to me in some of the responses, the goals were not to reduce the cost of substitutes, but to keep teachers in front of the classroom.
Okay.
So it's a better understanding of what the goals are is always helpful.
And I appreciate that. So maybe this other part too, which is all the stuff with the health insurance and the HSA deductibles and everything. There's a lot of numbers in there that I'm just not sure. And because it's their first year doing this, maybe it'll all shift at the end.
Yeah.
And we'll see a better picture of it because, it seems like with the encumbrances, everything, there's still a lot left over, which is confusing me.
There is a line item on this. I don't know what page it is, but there is a line item on here, 5210.06, perfect attendance
Yeah.
incentive.
Yeah.
So
That's how much they've spent, though. is
That's
the
how
thing.
much they've spent.
yeah.
But then if you see, there's also, like you say, the long-term subs is over budget. So where's the savings in this? And I think that's a perfect question to ask.
Well, I think the question would be, with that being 126,000 through March, which there'll be a payment made in April for the third quarter, or the first quarter, I guess you want to put it, plus everything else, how does that shake out at the end of the year? Because it doesn't look
Right.
like it was budgeted in that line item. So those are just things but as you said, some of this is new for this year. The health insurance is new for this year. This incentive is new for this year. So we'll have to see how it plays out afterwards.
Okay. And I know that when you talk about the health insurance, I did receive a letter from the two co-chairs regarding the internal service fund. The resolution that was adopted indicated that we were going to do a report and present it to a joint meeting of the boards in January. You may recall in January, I reported that there was so much activity in that account that, and the IBNR claims were still coming in somewhat rapid fire, that we felt it would be better off to wait for those IBNR claims to slow down and do a full report when we were in a better position to give you final numbers. I would like to also include, and I responded to the co-chairs, that I will include a discussion on that internal service fund at the joint meeting that's 2 weeks from today. And what I'll do is I'll also invite the city council, because that resolution did say a joint meeting with the city council. So we'll do that full report. I think we seem to have finally slowed down on those claims. I know that both Erica and Olivia, myself, and Corporation Council had a Zoom call with our insurance provider, Cigna, and with Joe Spurgeon to go over what was occurring and where we thought we were going to land. That was last month. So based on those conversations, I think we're ready to start reporting out. Okay, if there are no further questions on the performance reports, I'll call this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, motion carries. Item 6, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Drop.
Second.
Second, Ms. Pesky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? To you, Dan. Anything? Yes? Yeah, please.
So first, I'll talk about our small cities loans that we have. Right now, we've got approximately $91,000 that has been approved for ongoing projects, and that's for about 6 or 7 different homeowners. And we've got approximately $98,000, which will be added to our asset list for individuals that have passed away and their estates are currently in probate. So those funds will be coming back to the city to be utilized. Currently, we have, and I can call that our asset value. That current asset value is $2,688,580.73. And that's it for small cities. For the capital tax recovery, which is the out-of-state license plates, this is an update on what I've given you last time. So let's see, we go back to they've now captured 230 vehicles. For a total collection of $126,653.60. Out of that, 40% is what's paid to CTR. So that comes to 50,661.46. And they also get a fee for each vehicle that they get. And I believe it's $50. So that fee that they've earned so far is $11,500. So we've paid CTR just about half of what we've taken in. We paid them $62,161.46. And then lastly, I'd just like to talk about our interest income that we're going to have. Did a study that Mayor asked us to reach out and calculate what we were expected for interest for the 25-26 fiscal year. And I did a study. I calculated we're probably going to do about 84% of what we're currently doing. So that'll result in probably a net loss of $800,000 to $900,000 next year. And the reason I figure that is because the Federal Reserve is saying that they're going to decrease the interest rate probably 3 more times and 25 basis points per time. And that's how I came up with that value. So we need to keep that in mind when we're doing our budget work. Hate to give you bad news, but.
Are there any other questions for Dan?
Not a question, but I wasn't here last, excuse me, I wasn't here last month, but then I read the minutes and I was very pleased about the bond sales.
Oh, they went
And that
well, yeah.
we were able to get that in sort of under the wire compared to, if we were doing it
Mm.
last week or this week. And
It went very well, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Anything else? Yeah.
Anything from the finance department?
I think we're good. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything. Our assistant deputy started, so we've been working on training her for that. Otherwise, we're starting to kind of gear up for the last quarter, because fiscal year ends coming sooner than later. But I feel like we're in a better position than we were last year, obviously, and able to just continue to. I'm hoping it'll be smoother, getting the audit stuff done and everything. And then I don't know if there's anything budget wise, but. Not much budget wise. We're still working through with budget subcommittee. I know we're gonna, I think, take a look at revenues, projected revenues for fiscal year 26 at budget subcommittee coming up. So plugging away.
So I'll add to their comments. Obviously, the review of the revenue is becoming a little concerning to all of us. So while we have this incredible grand list adjustment, I'm not calling it growth. It is really an adjustment. So no real new revenue, just a different value on residential real estate and a much lower increase in the valuation of our commercial real estate. Throw in the added adjustments on motor vehicle revenues and losses of some grants, particularly the motor vehicle transition grant. It's really going to be very tricky for us to fill all of the holes that, have been created, or these artificial bumps in values. So I'm not particularly looking forward to what these public discussions are going to be. It's there are going to be some tough decisions on what we adopt for a spending plan that takes into consideration what we're losing by way of revenues and how the making up of those lost revenues through residential real estate taxes is going to work. So a lot of work to do, and grateful that I have a finance team, you know, as good as Erica and Olivia are. Erica's in my office all the time with an update on revenues. And which is why I keep sending out these emails saying, you know, what are we looking for by way of revenues? Our cannabis revenue also, I think we may have overstated that revenue. Yeah.
You know, it's admin. It was, they have to give their gross sales amount to the state monthly, and one of the cannabis retailers in town, I noticed in reading the paper about a month or so ago, I believe they had 7 different retail establishments in the state, but they were closing 3 of them. They were having issues. I don't know if it's financial or what the reasons are, but the amount of revenue that they gave to the state last month was considerably less than what they've been giving us up to that point. Somebody in our office thought that maybe they had closed. I've driven by, they've not. So, but we've had twice where I had to hit them with a delinquent payment because they didn't report their earnings to the state in time. And it's possible that they only recorded part of it. So I don't honestly know at this point. We'll have a better feel at the end of this next month.
Yeah, I
Where we're at,
appreciate
but-
that. So it seems to be every line item, and this is where Erica's expertise comes in. Every single line item is under scrutiny, you know, and in light of the revenue adjustments that we had after adapting our FY25 budget, I think she's particularly sensitive to really drilling down to make sure that, you know, we're careful not to overestimate, which never looks good on an audit. So, all right. Yeah, questions?
Mayor, I've been reading some other communities have been spreading out from their revaluation and spreading it out over. And a little hard for me to know whether that's really a good idea or not, because it's just going to happen at some point anyways. And by the time you do it, it's time for another revaluation.
All right.
But you don't have to do the full 5 years. I guess some communities have done 2 and 3 years. What's your opinion?
So that question came up at the last budget subcommittee meeting. I did reach out to our assessor. She had indicated that it's rarely enough benefit to offset the, you know, that one-time pain of, you know, you implement that. Right now, if we're looking at a 25% increase in property taxes, if you spread that out over a 5-year period of time, it is 5% plus any increases in your budget year over year. And the taxpayers never get, you know, they're never done seeing those more significant increases. She also said that there's a lot of work that would be pushed to her office because each year she would have to go through the revaluation. What I will do is I'll ask her to come to the Board of Finance meeting before we set the mill rate so that the Board of Finance can have that information.
I think that would be a good idea.
Under the circumstances, I don't think we should overlook any options. So, other questions, comments?
Just because we are talking about budget season, the other question I have, because the emphasis, a lot of this is on the question of revenue, with everything going on the federal level, which no one knows what's going on, but with everything going on the federal level, and the chance that the federal dollars will not be coming through to the states like they were in the past for things such as education because of minimum budget requirement. the taxpayers would have to pick up any lost revenue, correct? So I think, I encourage people in general, but I encourage us, we have to keep an eye on that, because if there are different grants that they did get in the past that for whatever reason, with all of the stuff going on the federal level, do not come through the state, which means they do not come through the towns, the taxpayers will also have to pick up that, as well as everything else that we're losing. So that just was in my mind the other day when my head was spiraling about.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't know what our state revenues are going to be, because obviously their budget season is still.
Full swing. Yeah.
And last, on that budget subject, obviously we can speak later, is we talk to people every day, and all I can say is I just keep pleading to people, please do some research. Please look at what your reassessment was, pay attention, come to the meetings. I want people to come to the meetings. I want people to be there. I wish there was a line of speakers that could, really be engaged in this conversation, because just like last year, this year is going to be a very difficult budget.
That is the advice that we've been giving
Yeah.
as well. Everybody that emails or sends me a note or makes a phone call, I encourage them to show up at these meetings so that the Board of Finance will hear what the public is concerned about. Other budget or finance department questions? All right, City Clerk, anything? No? All right. Then I'll, excuse me, move into item 7. And I'll entertain a motion to consider business by mayor and members.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Drop.
Second.
And second by Ms.
Second.
Iannacido. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, looks like we lost Mr. Bayes. So anything this evening, Mrs. Iannacido?
Just I know that there's some stuff coming up for budget and everything, I'll do what I can to be here as much as I can. So I'll review the calendar and make sure that we can do that. So
Thank you. Yeah. I'm trying to, if I have you out for an evening, I'm going to try to do as much as I can in an evening without keeping you up too late, because I know when we're talking numbers, it doesn't help to talk when you're tired. So I appreciate that. Mrs. Pesky,
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
you, Mrs. Trapp.
Yes and no. When we were talking about Board of Education before, I noticed one of the things on this report that came out had to do with Torringford sidewalks. And I can only say that I walk my dog up in the area all the time. And I think a question has to be had. The new sidewalks are already peeling and falling apart. So, that will be something that I, will want to know, what is the contractor going to do as far as responsibility on that? Only because we've had so many problems with concrete. The state of Connecticut's had problems with concrete with the crumbling foundations, and now I see these beautiful new, formations of sidewalk, and they're already peeling and they're coming apart, and I don't want to see that on something we just spent, I forgot how much it was, $62,000 on. So,
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. My son just had new concrete sidewalks put in September. This winter, they all peeled. Yeah, I know. So there's salt, obviously, that's being applied. I think that's part of the problem.
I obviously I am not an expert on this, and I know there's chemical reasons, but I also know there's certain application processes that have to be done right, and perhaps, and so that would be
Yeah.
my question. And we
Yep.
just spent all this money on that, what's being done about repairing it?
Well, it's a great question for not just the Board of Education and those sidewalks, but citywide.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's the same problems.
All right, then that.
Oh, one more thing. Has Midgeon Avenue facility gone on?
Oh, so great question. So yes, Planning and Zoning Commission gave us the 824 findings, consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development and what those zoning requirements are for that area. Referred it back to the City Council last week. The City Council directed me to put that on the market for competitive development. So we will be working on that.
There's not a time, like, limit to, you know how we put things out, bid, this is for sale, so it's just when somebody comes and wants to develop it.
I met with our economic development team to suggest that this might be a really good opportunity for us to do an RFQ for developers. You know, what would they be willing to pay for and what will they construct? You know, in this way, some ideas and some controls over what's going to happen there. That's a process. There's no, you know, there's no commitment. We might get, you know, a flurry of developer interest. They usually are looking for something at a low price, and they're going to build something, you know, that increases our tax rolls. But I think it might be worth the exercise just to see what people think that building could be reused for.
And to maybe encourage a little competition among them.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, if we give it to a broker and just say, we're looking for this asking price, you know, will we get anybody? Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you know, usually you ask me about the Yankee Peddler Inn.
You decided
So-
1 month not to.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to volunteer that information for you. So the Torrington Development Corporation is currently working on a petition to go back to the Superior Court, Judge Lynch, with a proposal for development for that property. Fingers are crossed, that petition will go in the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. And there's statutorily a 30-day period. The petition has to be shared with the defendant in the action for them to respond to it. But you will see a little bit more activity on that as well. That's another property I'd love to see get back on our tax rolls. So, all right, if there are no other questions, I'm going to open the floor for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Trapp.
Second.
And second, Ms. Iannacito, all in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. I'm going to get you out early because the next meetings are going to be long.